If you would be turning with me again this evening to the Revelation, we will be talking about chapter 5. Revelation chapter 5. Now, one of the key factors that we noted in chapter 4 was that God is on the throne, God is all powerful, that if we are overcomers, that we will be blessed, even though we will face the persecutions that go on in the world. And that's one of the things that we always need to be remembering as we're studying the Revelation, is that this is written apocalyptically to a people who are undergoing persecution and are facing a worse persecution. So as John is in the Spirit, as he is looking in this throne room scene, we note the power that God has. God is ruling all things. Now we understand that there are things that happen in our world that we scratch our heads and wonder why. But God has given us the choice on how we will live in this world. And he also has given us the choice of the outcome of the after while. So as we move into chapter 5, it notes this scene, this astounding scene that John is seeing is moving very quickly since he initially entered the Spirit of the Lord's Day on the Lord's Day back in chapter 1. So this is getting out. It's being talked about. We've talked about, yes, you're under persecution. Yes, you're going to face worse. But God is in power. And that again goes back to chapter 4. So as we move along here in this, it notes within chapter 5, the same kind of thing, is that God is in power and the Lamb of God is worthy to take care of the difficulties that humanity faces. In chapter 4, we found John in the Spirit again, looking through the open door into heaven, where the majesty of the Father was magnified by the presence of the elders and the cherubim singing, "Holy, holy, holy." They were worshiping God. The 4th chapter ended on a note of glory for the Lord, but the 5th chapter opens with something missing. And that's what we're going to talk about. And if you keep in your mind again, the people in Asia Minor, what they're dealing with, what their questions are, how is this going to turn out? It brings more to light in our understanding of the Revelation. It notes here in this chapter the prophecies to come in the rest of the book are described as being upon a scroll, or some of your versions use the word book, which must be opened for John's witness. And that's the key factor that we're getting into as we go into chapter 5 and verse 1. In Revelation chapter 5 and verse 1, beginning there, it says, "And I saw in the right hand of him who sat on the throne a book, written inside and on the back, sealed up with 7 seals. And I saw a strong angel proclaiming with a loud voice, 'Who is worthy to open the book and to break its seals?' And no one in heaven or on earth or under the earth was able to open the book." Here we note that God the Father is sitting upon his throne in heaven. And we find over in Matthew 3 that thunderous voice whenever he proclaimed that this is my beloved Son in whom I am well pleased, talking about Jesus. And from this point here, he had created the world. He had overseen its development. From here, he had nurtured the scheme of salvation and attended to the prayers of the faithful. God is in charge. That's a key factor here. Now, we also note that we find him still engaged with mankind. He is holding in his hand this scroll or book that promises to reveal the answer to the most pressing questions that's being debated in Asia Minor. What about this problem with persecution? What about the Romans? What about the pagans? What about these Jews that are persecuting us? You know, if you're being persecuted, that's on your mind a lot. God has in his hand this scroll or this book that's going to give the answers. And that's what we find within this context. Not something that's going to be 200 or 2,000 or 10,000 years down the way. But this is what's happening for these individuals. Yet it is applicable when we too face persecution, to take solace, encouragement from what's being written to the 7 churches of Asia. Chapter 5 begins with a fresh episode in the same setting, following the worship scene at the end of chapter 4. But the focus is on this book, also on the 7 seals. And we note that it is in the right hand of him who is sitting on the throne. All of these things are important when we look at this and we understand what's going on within this context. The fact that it is written on front, written on, and on the back signifies that what revelation is being given to us here is that which is full and complete. We read the same kind of idea over in Ezekiel chapter 2, verses 9 and 10, where it says, "And I look, behold, a hand is extended to me, and lo, a scroll was in it. And he spread it out before me. It was written on the front and the back, and written on it were lamentations, mourning, and woe." What John is seeing is that which is the complete revelation of God. It is perfect. It is that which will encourage these people who are facing such struggles. Same thing in Ezekiel chapter 2. It notes here in verse 2, the following are questioned utterly loudly by the strong angel: "Who is worthy to open the book and to loose the seals thereof?" And no one is found that is able, and it notes there, anywhere in the universe, in heaven or on earth. This is given, it's there, it's complete, but no individual, no created being can open that book. But as we will note, there is one who can, because he is, number one, the Son of God, but secondly, he is the great sacrifice. No one can do this. Well, I want you to think just a little bit about that. No one can do this. No one can help these people. No one can give them the words that they need. No one can tell them what's going to happen and the blessings of being an overcomer and being faithful. No one's going to be able to open this book. And John begins to weep greatly, verse 4. "And I began to weep greatly because no one was found worthy to open the book or to look into it. And one of the elders said to me, 'Stop weeping. Behold, the Lion that is in the tribe of Judah, the Root of David, has overcome so as to open the book and its 7 seals. Well, noting again the 7 seals, this thing was totally sealed up. It could not be opened except by the one that is noted here within this passage. Now, when it talks about he began to weep greatly, this denotes the idea that it was not just weeping and crying a little bit, but he was devastated. John is devastated that this cannot be opened. And he was perplexed to the point that it was just terrible weeping, terrible crying. And then one of the elders denoted the idea that it's going to be all right. The perfect tense of the verb weep much implies he continued crying until one of the elders spoke to him. And he wept. Perhaps it was due to the combination of things, the overwhelming emotional power of the scene, created in part by the sense of great urgency. That's a key. Remember, the persecution from Dominion was at hand. It was coming quickly. And that's what it's initially responding to. It notes here in John's own sense of disappointment at the prospect of not realizing the promise of Revelation 4:1 concerning that he was already in deep anticipation. We've got to have some help. We've got to know what we need to do to be able to endure what they're facing and what they will be facing. There are 3 descriptions in this passage that is noting Jesus. Number 1 is the Lion of the tribe of Judah. Number 2 is the Root of David. And we are told that he has conquered. Now, that word conquered is also noted as overcome. He has overcome. And that brings to light the idea that he has conquered all of these things that stand opposed to the children of God. When we talk about the Lion of the tribe of Judah, that is a messianic title. Jesus is from the tribe of Judah. In Genesis chapter 49, beginning in verse 9, it says, Judah is the lion's whelp. From the prey, my son, you have gone up. He crouches, he lies down as a lion. And as a lion who dares rouse him up. And the scepter shall not depart from Judah, nor the ruler's shaft from between his feet until Shiloh comes. And to be him, and to him shall be the obedience of the people. This is a messianic prophecy. And this is a messianic title according to that idea. When it talks about the root of David, is also a messianic title. We know that Jesus descended from David according to the flesh in Romans chapter 1 and verse 3. And in the book of Isaiah, chapter 11, verses 1 through 10, it speaks of David's father, Jesse. In Isaiah 11:1, it says, Then the shoot will spring from the stem of Jesse, and the branches from his roots will bear fruit. And then if we drop down to verse 10, it says, Then it will come about in that day that the nations will resort to the root of Jesse, who will stand as a signal for the people, and his resting place will be glorious. And this denotes the idea of Jesus's lineage. He is that individual who is from the root of David. It also notes he is one who has conquered or overcome. This is in the present tense. When this was spoken, when this is written, he is the overcomer. He has overcome. It's past tense. This has happened. He is the conqueror. Not that he's about to conquer something, but he's already done it. Jesus conquered Rome at the cross. But not only did he conquer Rome, he conquered Satan at the cross. And as we go through this, it will be illuminated a little more about his conquering of Satan and the restriction therein. It notes, in fact, Jesus has conquered Rome at the very point that Rome thought it had conquered Jesus. They thought they'd gotten rid of him. But once again, things are not as they seem. They did not. He was raised from the dead. But he did conquer. He did overcome. And that was on the cross and being raised from the dead. Now, God did not need to search for someone to open this scroll. God did not need to search for Christ. The search, the waiting, the weeping are presented for dramatic effect, give us the insight into how these people, how John was feeling. The angel in verse 2 knew the answer to the question before he asked it. He knew that there was that one who is the overcomer, the conqueror, the one who gave his life on the cross for all of us. In verse 6 and 7 of Revelation chapter 5, it says, "And I saw between the throne with the 4 living creatures and the elder, a lamb standing as if slain, having 7 horns and 7 spirits, which are the 7 spirits of God sent out into all the earth. And he came, and he took it out of the right hand of him who sat on the throne." He's talking about the scroll or the book, the one with the 7 seals. This was the one who could open it. One of the 24 elders disturbed John's painful suspense and identifies the only one worthy in all the universe to break the seal, to reveal what's inside this complete manuscript, this complete scroll or book. It is the Lion of Judah, the root of David, who has prevailed, overcome. Jesus is also called the root of David, a term that would come to contradict his claim to descend from Judah and be descended from David at the same time, but it is merely showing his eternal nature. And again, you can go back and do a study on Jesus' lineage. Yet when John looked to behold the lion, he instead sees the lamb, as if it had been slain with 7 horns and 7 eyes. Now, again, this is apocalyptic language. It is bringing to light some realities that these people who were Christians could understand. But the world could not, and many in the world still do not understand this idea about the lamb with 7 horns and 7 eyes, and they make up all kinds of stuff concerning these horns and these eyes, but it's very simple. If you just look at it with the idea of what are these people going through, what are they going to face, they need to understand what God needs them to do and get the encouragement from God. John looks, again, he expects to see a lion. We've talked about this in many aspects through Scripture. The people was looking for a Messiah to come to put in a physical kingdom and get rid of the Romans. That's what they're looking for. But what happened, as we have noted in many studies, Jesus came as the Messiah. He established a spiritual kingdom, and he gave us what we need to overcome, even though we face things like Rome. So he sees the lamb. He sees the lamb standing as though it had been slain. Now, this brings to light the idea that it wasn't just a roughed up lamb, but this lamb looked bad. It looked like it had been dead. This is the key that it's noting here. The lamb had many marks of slaughter upon it. It did not mean that the lamb merely looked like it had been slain. It means that the lamb had been slain. Jesus was slain on the cross. We remember the marks on his body as he was taken down on the cross and everything that happened in that situation. The marks of that event were still evident upon the lamb. And this slain lamb is standing, a vision of victory through sacrifice and suffering. That goes back to the idea of Jesus' resurrection. Jesus died, was the sacrifice, raised again, and now he is ready to lay out for these individuals God's perfect message to help them endure, to overcome. This lamb, of course, is Jesus, who overcame the world through his perfect sacrifice. Over in John 16:33, it notes there that he had overcome the world, had defeated the foes, not as a lion, but as a lamb. And by this, his subjects must also now conquer. And that's another factor within this, is that we must deal with this. Now, this lamb wasn't exactly what we would think of a little baby lamb. Have you ever seen a little baby lamb? You know how cute they are? Yeah, little baby lambs are really cute. You ever dealt with a ram? They quit being cute. Whenever they knock you down, they quit being cute. They got some power behind them. Jesus was more like the ram than the cute little baby lamb that many want to depict. And it's noted here in this, the horns were used by the Hebrews to depict power. And he had completeness of power. That's talking about the 7 horns. Here it represents Jesus' complete and perfect power and wisdom. Later in Revelation and also in Daniel, we see the horns are used to depict kings. But here the horns depict the royalty of Christ, his complete sovereignty over all things, and he's powerful. I mean, he is the ultimate. And that denotes the 7 horns. And then they talk about the 7 eyes, which are the 7 spirits of God. Again, completeness. The number 7 denotes completeness. He sees everything. The omnipotence, the omnipresence. All of those things belong to Jesus. He knows what's going on. He sees what's going on. And in essence, this depicts the work that's going on for not only the people in the 7 churches of Asia, but us today. The Lord sees completely, with all wisdom, all power. And it's that simple. Now, I understand that there are those that would try to differentiate between each of these horns, and as we get on down into Revelation, they really want to do that. And he's got 7 eyes, and they make all these crazy, wild, but it's just so simple. Jesus is powerful and he sees everything. It's that simple. People want to make too much out of what the Revelation teaches us. As we get down to verse 8, Revelation chapter 5, it says, when he had taken the book, the 4 living creatures and the 24 elders fell down before the Lamb, and each one holding a harp and a bowl, a golden bowl full of incense, which are the prayers of the saints. And they sang a new song, saying, worthy are you to take the book and to break its seals, for you were slain and purchased for God with your blood men from every tribe and tongue and people and nation. You have made them to be a kingdom and priests to our God, and they will reign upon the earth. Then I looked and heard a voice of many angels around the throne, and the living creatures and elders, and the number of them was myriads of myriads and thousands of thousands, saying with a loud voice, worthy is the Lamb that was slain to receive power and riches and wisdom and might and honor and glory and blessings. Jesus took the book, the scroll, and all fell down before him and worshiped him. The 28 elders, the cherubim, see him take that scroll, and they fall down because they know that he is the conqueror, that he is the overcomer. And the new song that these 28 sing reveals the Lamb is worthy because he had been slain for the redemption of humanity. And he is the one that can open this. And in chapter 6, we will see that being opened. The bowl of incense. These are the prayers of the saints. We will see later that everything in this book came about as a result of the prayers of the saints. Think about those folks in Asia Minor that were starving to death because they couldn't work, they couldn't buy food, they couldn't take care of their families. They were cast out into the street. Those prayers were powerful. These folks prayed for assistance, and they were going to receive it. Maybe not in the way that they thought, but yet they're going to receive that encouragement. While despised on earth, these prayers are brought to God in golden bowls. God hears our prayers. Reminds us of Psalm 141, verse 2, where it says, may my prayer be counted as incense before you, the lifting up of my hands as the evening offering. God hears our prayers and God answers our prayers. It also notes in this that it was his blood which purchased the church, the household of faith, the home of obedient believers, and formed a kingdom composed of souls from under every regime on the earth. And it notes here, there in verse 9, that he was the one who purchased this. And I tried to point that out as we read through that just a moment ago. But in verse 9, it notes there that they sang a new song, saying, worthy are you to take the book and break the seals. For denotes because. Because you were slain and you purchased for God with your blood every man from every tribe and tongue and people and nation. Jesus gave for every individual in the world. And it notes here that he purchased with his blood these men for God. Go back and do a little more study on verse 9. It's a powerful thing when you really look at it. In 1 Peter chapter 2, starting in verse 7, it says, "This precious value then is for you who believe. For those who disbelieve, the stone which the builder rejected, this became the very cornerstone, and a stone of stumbling and a rock of offense, for they stumble because they are disobedient to the word, and to this doom they are also appointed. But you are a chosen race, a royal priesthood, a holy nation, a people for God's own possession, that you may proclaim the excellencies of him who has called you out of darkness into his marvelous light. For you were once not a people, but now you are the people of God, who had not received mercy, but now you have received mercy." The chosen grows out of being God's children in essence. The chorus that's noted here grows beyond the 28 to an innumerable host of angels and heavenly beings, all singing about the worthiness of the Lamb that was slain. It's a new song, new covenant that these people are under. And we talked a lot about that back in our study of Hebrews. The 28 elders and the cherubim shout out their approval of this worship scene and continue their own praise of the eternal Lamb. A chapter that began with suspense, disappointment, and tears ends with shouts of joy and hopefulness. For a worthy, prevailing Lamb will surely have something to say about a demonic, murderous emperor. They're going to get encouragement. They're going to be able to be overcomers. And that's what they're seeing here. They've seen the power of God in chapter 4. We see that Jesus is the one that's able to open the encouragement, the scroll that comes from God. In verses 13 and 14, it says, in every created thing, which is in heaven and on earth and under the earth and on the sea, and all things in them, I heard saying, to him who sits on the throne and to the Lamb be blessed and honor and glory and dominion forever and ever. And the four living creatures kept saying, Amen. And the elders fell down and worshiped. The angels are followed by the totality of creation that praises both the one on the throne and the Lamb, that is Jesus. Four qualities already ascribed to the Lamb are now imputed to both. Perhaps the four corresponding to the four divisions of creation, heaven, earth, under the earth, and the sea. The four living creatures who commenced the worship now fittingly ended it together with the elders. So good things are coming. Jesus died on the cross for you guys. That's what he said. God's in heaven. God's listening. God sent his only begotten Son to die for you. You can be overcomers no matter what happens in this world. And we can take that same encouragement. Now, next month, we will continue in chapter 6, and we will note the opening of this scroll/book that had been completely sealed, but also was completely the will of God. Everything's in there that they need to know. to overcome what they are facing. We'll start there next time.